seated. Let's seek the Lord in prayer together. God, when the world looks at us, they see so many different things. They place so many different labels on us. But very rarely do they actually know our name. They might have heard it before, they might know bits and pieces of who we are. But God, they don't know us like you do. And Lord, you look at us and you see a lot of the labels that the world has put on us. You see us exactly as we are. Yet you choose to know her name anyway. And beyond that, God, you look at us and you choose to more than just know our names. You want to bring us in and make us a part of your family. You want to make us citizens of the kingdom of heaven. Lord, you're not expecting us to come as somebody we're not. You're not expecting us to behave as somebody we're not. And Lord, you're not waiting for us to get our act together to come before you. You're not waiting for us to have all the answers before we approach you. God, no, you say it, and you look at us and you know us by name, and you call us and say, come just as you are. And Lord, here we are this morning, your people. We're hungry and we're thirsty for you today. Lord, we sang this morning of your great faithfulness, and blessed be your name, and we praise you for the grace and the mercy that you've poured out upon us, God. But we're here this morning because we want more. Now, Lord, as we look to your word today, may it speak to us, may it challenge us, and may we leave here never the same. In your name I pray. Amen. Have you ever stopped and thought about the furniture in the church? Maybe it's because I'm a pastor and I stop and think about these things. We're going to be reading out of Joshua chapter 22 today. So you will begin turning in your Bibles there. But yeah, sometimes I stop and I think about the furniture we have in our church. And it's a rather strange collection if you really stop and think about it. And most likely you're not going to walk into an Ashley's furniture store and find the church collection in there. And if you log on and you do your online shopping and you order your furniture that way, you're probably not going to find the church section on Wayfair.com. But I mean, stop and really think about the furniture that we have. So over here we have this piano, which Jane does a beautiful job of playing for us and leading us in worship. But at the same time, if you go into the fellowship hall, we have a library. Piano and a library. One is loud, one you're supposed to be quiet and study. Ever stop and think about that? It's like a contradiction. Or the other one, how about this? You walk in our entrance over here, and we have these two big comfy chairs that sit in the main hallway. Right? And those chairs are there so that way when you get here, you have a place to sit and be comfortable for a few minutes before you come into this room and sit down in these wooden, somewhat padded pews for 20, 30, okay, 40 minutes. Think about that. Yeah, it's a strange collection. And really, the piece of furniture we're going to focus on today is these two big long wooden things at the front. We call them the altars. And if you go to pretty much any Christian church, you'll find an altar somewhere right here at the front, off the sides, but somewhere in that sanctuary you're going to find an altar. not just a piece of furniture in Christianity, but it's been a piece of religion since the beginning of time. Now, the one difference between us and how some of the others have used it is we don't use it to sacrifice animals or children. So if you thought about doing that today, sacrificing a child or an animal on the altar, please don't do that, because I don't want to have to clean up the carpet. Okay? Just don't do that. But if you haven't figured this out yet, everything in the church has a purpose and a meaning to it. Have you ever stopped and realized that everything that we have in the church has a purpose behind it? And that's kind of how the altar is. And so the question we have to ask about the altar is, what does the altar have to do with our faith? What is the purpose of it? Why do we have it? Naturally, the answer that comes to our mind is it's where eternal decisions are made and where victories are won. At least that's how one of my pastor friends put it this week. And all of us, we can think back to a service, or at least most of us, to at some point where we gathered to worship together, and the Holy Spirit moved either through the singing or through the testimonies or through the preaching, and all of a sudden at the end of the service, these altars were filled with people seeking God. And that's how we come to that definition and that belief that, this is where people come to meet God. But at the same time, are these altars the only place where you come to meet God? Is this the only spot where you can find Him? No. So what is the purpose of it? And it's important for us as Christians to understand the purpose, again, behind why we have these altars. Because without it, this furniture becomes meaningless. And when something in the church becomes meaningless, it's not good for anything. Or worse, it becomes an idol. So why do we have the altars? The message this morning is titled The Altar, and the question we'll be trying to answer as we study the text is, what is the purpose of the altar? All right, Joshua chapter 22, and I forgot to look for it. Don't worry, I cheat though. Joshua chapter 22, we're going to start reading at verse 9 through verse 34. So the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh left the Israelites at Shiloh in Canaan to return to Gilead, their own land, which they had acquired in accordance with the command of the Lord through Moses. When they came to Gilead, near the Jordan in the land of Canaan, the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of Manasseh built an imposing altar there by the Jordan. When the Israelites heard that they had built an altar on the border of Canaan, Ekaloth, near the Jordan, on the Israelite side, wow. But the whole assembly of Israel gathered at Shiloh to go to war against them. So the Israelites sent Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest, to the land of Gilead, to Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh. With them they sent 10 of the chief men, one for each of the tribes of Israel, each to have a family division among the Israelite clans. When they went to Gilead, to Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh, they said to them, "The whole assembly of the Lord says, how could you break faith? How could you turn away from the Lord and build yourselves an altar in rebellion against Him? Was not the sin of Peor enough for us? Up to this very day, we have not cleansed ourselves from that sin. Even though a plague fell on the community of the Lord, and you are now turning away from the Lord? If you rebel against the Lord today, tomorrow He'll be angry with all of us. That the land you possess is defiled. Come over to the Lord's land, where the Lord's tabernacle stands, and share the land with us. But do not rebel against the Lord or against us by building an altar for yourselves, other than the altar of the Lord God." When Achan, son of Zerah, acted unfaithfully regarding the devoted things, did not wrath come upon the whole community of Israel? He was not the only one who died for his sin. Then Reuben, Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh replied to the heads of the clans, "The mighty one, God the Lord, the mighty one, God the Lord, he knows. And let Israel know, if this has been in rebellion or in disobedience to the Lord, do not spare us this day. If we have built our own altar to turn away from the Lord and to offer burnt offerings and grain offerings, or to sacrifice fellowship offerings on it, may the Lord himself call us to account. No, we did it for the fear that someday your descendants might say to ours, 'What do you have to do with the Lord, the God of Israel?' The Lord has made the Jordan a boundary between us and you. You Reubenites and Gadites, you have no share in the Lord. Your descendants might cause ours to stop fearing the Lord. That is why we said, 'Let us get ready and build an altar.' But not for burnt offerings or sacrifices. On the contrary, it is to be a witness between us and you, and the generations that follow, that we will worship the Lord at his sanctuary with our burnt offerings, sacrifices, and fellowship offerings. Then in the future, your descendants will not be able to say to ours, 'You have no share in the Lord.' And we said, if they ever say this to us, to our descendants, we will answer, 'Look at the replica of the Lord's altar, which our fathers built, not for burnt offerings and sacrifices, but as a witness between us and you. Far be it from us to rebel against the Lord and turn away from him today, by building an altar for burnt offerings, grain offerings, and sacrifices, other than the altar of the Lord our God that stands before his tabernacle.' When the Phinehas the priest and the leaders of the community, the heads of the clans of the Israelites, heard what Reuben and Gad and Manasseh had to say, they were pleased. And Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest, said to Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, 'Today we know that the Lord is with us, because you have not acted unfaithfully to the Lord in this matter. Now you have rescued the Israelites from the Lord's hand.' Then Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest, and the leaders continued to Canaan for their meetings with the Reubenites and the Gadites and Gilead, and reported to the Israelites. They were glad to hear the report and praise God. And they talked no more about going to war against them to devastate the country where the Reubenites and the Gadites lived. And the Reubenites and the Gadites gave the altar this name, a witness between us that the Lord is God." This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. So the book of Joshua is a historical document. It is literally a history book. And it tells us what happened when God's chosen people, the Hebrews, finally reached the promised land. So throughout the Pentateuch, which is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and there's 5. They are traveling, trying to get back to this promised land. And you'll have to go back and read the story for yourself. I don't have time to get on, but we'll be here all day. And they're finally getting ready to enter the promised land, but when they get there, it's occupied. And God tells them, you have to go in and claim this land. And I'll help you. Don't be afraid of the people there. I'm going to help you. I promise you, this is your promised land. This is your land flowing with milk and honey. But you're going to have some work to do. And so pretty much the entire book of Joshua is the history of those conquests and the battles that they fight. And there are some crazy things that happen in the book of Joshua. Like the sun stops moving at one point. You'll have to go study that for yourself too. But where we're at today in chapter 22, it's all over. The Israelites have conquered the entire land. It all belongs to them now. And everybody's going home. Now, there are 12 tribes in the nation of Israel. Right? 12 tribes. As they were about to enter the promised land, they have to do battle with some nations on the other side of the river before they can cross the River Jordan to get into the promised land. And so they conquer those people, and that land is vacant now. And so 2.5 of the tribes, that's the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh, 2.5 of the tribes decide, go to Moses and say, hey, Can we have this? Can this be our inheritance? And you find this in the book of Numbers. And Moses says, yes, the Lord says you can have this land as your own, but however, you must go with the rest of your family, subdue the rest of the land, and then you can come back and live here. But you must not abandon the rest of us until all of us can be at rest. So they did that. So they got the land on the first side of the river, but once they crossed over into the actual promised land, then they had to help their brothers and sisters and their family members fight the battle to find their inheritance. But once it was all over, they were going back home. In verses 9 and 10 it tells us, so the Reubenites and the Gadites and the half-tribe of Manasseh left the Israelites at Shiloh in Canaan to return to Gilead, their own land, which they had acquired in accordance with the command of the Lord through Moses. When they came to Gilead near the Jordan in the land of Canaan, the Reubenites, the Gadites, the half-tribe of Manasseh built an imposing altar there by the Jordan. That word imposing here in the NIV, I don't know, does anybody else have something other than the NIV right now? What do you have, Jim? What does it say in verse 10? Verse 10 about the altar.
When they came to the region of the Jordan, which is in the land of Canaan, the children of Reuben, the children of Gad, and the half-tribe of Manasseh built an altar there by the Jordan, a great, impressive altar.
Great impulsive. That's that great, impressive altar. That is more what it's trying to capture. The NIV doesn't do a very good job of giving you that emphasis here. It just says an imposing altar, which it means it's big, but when it says great and I forgot the second word, impressive, that means it is very noticeable. You can't miss it. It is right there. Why did they build this altar? Because they were so grateful for the God that blessed them that they wanted to show him that they were devoted to him. But they also built it also to not just show that they were devoted to this God, but to show everybody else that, hey, we belong to the faith of the God of Israel, to the God of Abraham and Jacob. This is where we belong. So they built this big, huge altar. So that's what the 2.5 tribes did. So the 2.5 tribes built this amazing altar to the Lord God. And so how did the other 9.5 tribes respond? Verse 12. The whole assembly of Israel gathered at Shiloh to go to war against them. Well, that escalated quickly. Didn't it? It's like they're building this altar to glorify God, and all of a sudden the whole rest of their brethren are gathered outside ready to go to war with them. I mean, imagine if you're in their shoes and you look up and you see all of your family. I mean, talk about family reunions. Talk about all your family is gathered around you and they're all carrying weapons of war, and you're like, oh no, this is not good. Now, why would they react this way? Well, mainly because there was one place of worship for the entire nation of Israel. That was the tent of meeting, or also known as the tabernacle. And during this time period, that tent of meeting was located in the city of Shiloh, in the land of the other 9.5 tribes. Whenever an Israelite wanted to worship God or offer sacrifices, they would have to travel to Shiloh to this tent of meeting, and that's where it was to take place. And that was the command of God to his people. This is where you're supposed to worship, because I want my people to worship together. And they remember that their God was a jealous God. He didn't like it when they did things that he didn't prescribe. So these other 9.5 tribes, they decided they were going to rise up and they were going to squash this rebellion before it got out of hand. Now, somewhere in the midst of the heat of the battle, someone had the wisdom to suggest that, hey, maybe before we go in and squash everybody, let's send in Phinehas, the high priest. he goes in there. And he begins to have a conversation with them. He walks up to his brother, the 2.5 of his relative, tribe of his relatives, and says, hey guys, we need to talk. And judging by the army outside, that the 2.5 tribes, they got the message. Yeah, there needs to be a conversation here. Something has to take place, because something is not right. So Phineas, in verse 16, he kind of goes into this dialogue, and he says, here we go. The whole assembly of the Lord says, how could you break faith with the God of Israel like this? How could you turn away from the Lord and build yourselves an altar in rebellion against us now, or against him now? He's like looking at him and saying, how could you do this? You know what God commanded us? He said, we all have to worship together at the tent of meeting. And here you are, you built your own. It looks just like ours. You copied our design. But you know that's not what God authorized you to build. How could you do this? Verse 17. Phineas continues, was not the sin of Peor enough for us? Up to this very day, we have not cleansed ourselves from that sin, even though a plague fell on the community of the Lord. And are you now turning away from the Lord? So he looks at me and he says, and don't you remember what happened when we were in the wilderness still wandering around? This event at Peor, Phineas remembers it well. He remembers it because it's the day he picked up a spear and he used it in the name of the Lord. What happened? Well, in Numbers 25, it tells a story of God telling his people not to intermarry with the nations that surrounded them. He said, hey, don't intermix yourselves with these other nations because they worship in ways that are not of God. And this is kind of a side note, it's not in my notes, but this is why it's so important. When Paul talks and writes about being equally yoked, if you're a single person here today, understand it is critical and very important that you date somebody and you enter in a relationship with somebody that shares the same faith as you. I know your mind, you're thinking, well, I love Jesus and they love me, so if they love me, they'll come to church and God can change them. That's a rationality that we tell ourselves, but it doesn't ever work out that way. Very rarely does it. And God knew this, and so that's why he's telling his people, don't intermarry with these nations because they're going to drag you down. So what do the people do? Anybody want to throw a wild guess what they do? The first three guesses don't count. Okay, can you guess what they did? They intermarried anyway. We'll let it count, Nancy. Good answer. Nancy gets a gold star today. They intermarried anyway. God told them don't do it. And what do? They do it anyway. It says in Numbers, to quote Numbers 25, it says, men indulge in sexual immorality with Moabite women. And not only did they intermarry with these women, it led them to sacrificing to the women, to the gods of these women. These rocks, these statues, whatever it was they worshipped that wasn't the true God. The people of Israel started worshiping it with them. So a great plague comes upon the nation of Israel, and it kills 24,000 people. And what finally puts a halt to it is Phineas finds an Israelite man and his Moabite wife, and he takes a spear and he runs it through both of them. Numbers 25. This is the parts you don't read to the kids in Sunday school. So Phineas remembers this. He remembers the sin, and those that were still around from the wilderness wanderings that entered the land of Canaan, they would remember it too. And the ones that were a generation after that, they would remember the stories from their parents and their grandparents of, you better listen to God. If he says not to intermarry, you better not intermarry. And so Phineas, trying to reason with these 2.5 tribes, says, don't you remember the sin of Peor, what happened? We messed up big time. Do you really want to take the whole nation back there again? It goes on in what verse is it? Verse 19a. It says, if the land you possess is defiled, come over to the Lord's land, where the Lord's tabernacle stands, and share the land with us. Do not rebel against the Lord or against us by building an altar for yourselves. It says, if the land, you 2.5 tribes, if the land where you're at is so corrupt and defiled, just get out of there. Just leave your possessions behind. It's better for you to come share with us so we can all live and be in relationship with God than for you to sin and put us all at risk. That kind of echoes the words of Jesus later on in Matthew chapter 5, verse 30, where Jesus says, if your right hand calls you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It's better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. This is kind of like Phineas is literally looking at the 2.5 saying, friends, family, it's better off to lose your land, lose your homes, and move in with us than to die in sin and to take us down with you. He's not done pleading with them yet. Verse 20. When Achan, son of Zerah, acted unfaithfully regarding the devoted things, did not wrath come upon the whole community of Israel? He was not the only one who died for sin. So Phineas continues in his pleading with them. And it sounds like some of the Israelites have a memory like me, and they can't remember nothing. But he's hoping some of them can remember the story of Achan, the sin of Achan. Anybody hear the story of Achan? Joshua chapter 7. All right. Well, what happens in Joshua chapter 7? This is a bit while they're conquesting in the promised land. And to make a long story very short, God tells his people, hey, I want you to go and attack the city. The land's going to be yours, but I don't want you to keep any of the spoils of war. Don't take none of it. Guess what happened? They took some of it, didn't they? Achan takes some of it. And they don't find out that Achan took some of the things that God told him not to until they go into the next battle, and all of a sudden, they lose. God told him he was going to fight with them and be there with them and help them. And all of a sudden, they lost. And so the entire nation is in prayer and mourning before God. God, why did this happen? And the Holy Spirit, the Spirit says to Joshua, hey, go talk to Achan. That's making a long story very, very short. But that story ends with not just Achan being punished for the sin, but his entire family is punished along with him. And if you're keeping score, it's not just Achan and his family, but it's think about all the soldiers that died on the battlefield in that loss and that defeat because of Achan's sin. Your sin never just affects you, it affects everyone around you. So Phineas, he brought that up and he said, hey, how could you? How could you, after knowing all this and witnessing all this, how could you build an altar that God didn't authorize? Then he gives the 2.5 tribes a chance to respond. In verse 22 it says, the mighty one God, the Lord, the mighty one God, the Lord, he knows. What's kind of cool is, and it gets lost in our English translations here. In this one cry out to God, they invoke the 3 different Hebrew names for God here. They take and use each one but so much that their plea is so earnest, so desperate. They use the 3 names of God to make sure that they know they've got his attention. And really, they know what their intentions were. These 2 knew the reason and the intentions behind why they built that altar. However, they knew that the intentions in their heart was not provable to the other 9.5. Sometimes it's just like that. You're trying to do the right thing and it's not working out the way you want to. And you know what the intentions of your heart is, but when other people look at it, there's no way for you to prove that to them. You have to trust God and let Him open their eyes of their heart, and hopefully they can see your heart in the matter. God has to answer that for you. You can't answer it for yourself. And since they couldn't prove themselves, prove their own intention, they actually are calling in God as a witness on their behalf. They're saying, God, we can't prove what we're about to say to these people, but God, we need your Spirit to intervene. And we need you to speak on our behalf, to reveal what's really going on here. Verses 26 and 27, it says, "This is why we say, let us get ready and build an altar, but not for burnt offerings or sacrifices. On the contrary, it is to be a witness between us and you, and the generations that follow, that we will worship the Lord at His sanctuary, with our burnt offerings, sacrifices, and fellowship offerings. Then in the future, your descendants will not be able to say to ours, you have no share with us." So they cry out to God, and then they throw out their fear. They say, we're afraid. We're afraid that one day you're going to forget that we belong to the family of God too. Because that tent of the tabernacle, it's in your land. It's surrounded by your people. But what if one day you all forget? So you don't forget, we built this altar as an exact replica like the one that you have during this meeting. Not to be in competition with yours. Not to offer any additional sacrifices or burnt offerings here. No, we built it as a witness between the two of us. Between our tribes. To say that we belong to the same God as you. That we belong to this God together. It was built as a legal witness. You're saying, how could a piece of furniture be a witness? How could a structure be a witness? It doesn't use words. No, it's by the very sight of it. When you look at it, you see it. Someone will think about you're with your young child, and the child looks up and he sees that altar and says, "Hey, Daddy, what's that? Dad, why is that altar there?" You can look at that child and say, this is so that our people, our family, and the family across the river can know that we belong to the same God. We just live in different areas. It's a legal witness. That's what the altar is in our day. Did you know that? That's what the altar is in our day. The altar in our day is a source of witness. It's not a place to found salvation or sanctification, but a witness to testify that you found the Jesus who offers the grace to perform those works in your life. As Matthew Henry says, Christ is the great altar. It's Him we run to. It's Him we go to with all of our problems, all of our anxieties, all of our sin, and we cast it on Him because He loves us and has a plan for us. He is the altar. He is the place to find grace. That's why we can find Him anywhere, because Jesus is not bound to a building. He's not somehow hog-tied to the altar and can't go nowhere else. No, Jesus, the Holy Spirit, comes and lives in your heart, and He goes where you go. That great altar, that great place of meeting is with you forever. But that does not make this altar useless and meaningless. No, it still has a purpose. It still has there's a place for it in the church. There's a reason why we have it up here. And the reason why we have it up here is to serve as a witness between you and me. Between you and me and the generations that live before us. Between you and me and the generation before us and the generations after us. To say that we belong to the same God. The same Jesus that can save you. The same Jesus that can sanctify you. The same Jesus that can bring healing into your life. We worship Him. And this altar testifies to that. You can look at it and know that God is working and moving. That God has a plan and He has a place for you. You see, Christ is the divine healer, but this altar and the others like it are witnesses to the miracles of Jesus. And those that will be. Amen? So what is the purpose of the altar? To be a witness to you finding salvation. What is the purpose of the altar? To be a witness to you being made holy by a holy God through the power of His grace. What is the purpose of the altar? It's a witness to you being healed by the power of God. What is the purpose of the altar? To be a witness between you and me that we belong to the same faith in Jesus. In just a few minutes, I'm going to invite you to this place of witness. But first, I want to remind you of what happened here at this altar. September 30th, 2018. Our district superintendent, Dan Eddings, was here with us. And you all gathered around me. And at this altar between you and I made a commitment to be your pastor. Along with Nicole and our kids. And I want you to know, even before that point, even before that moment of installation, I started giving you everything I had. And my intentions may not have always come across that way I would have hoped. But I want you to know I have served you with every ounce of being that I have. I have poured out everything that I possibly could. But today I stand at this altar for a different reason. I stand at this altar to tell you now I must love God by giving you back to Him. I want you to know I have accepted the call to be the pastor at Greensburg Church of the Nazarene in Greensburg, Kentucky. And my last Sunday will be Sunday, March 8th. And the reason I want to do this here at the altar, because I want it to be a witness between you and I that God is not done with you yet, and God's not done with me yet. God has a plan and a purpose in all this. And we share the faith of the same God. And as we close this morning, I don't know. I just feel like we should gather at the altar. I don't know what you're here for. Some of you are probably mad at me now. I'm going to do a hymn. I'll try and duck. But I get workman's comp, so don't be surprised if I'm slow. But if you're here this morning and you want to be healed by something from Jesus, these altars are open. If you came here this morning looking for something from Jesus, He's here and He wants to come to these altars and find Him. Church, if you want to help pray for God's guidance in this church and over your leaders now as they get ready to embark on a difficult journey. These altars, that's what they're here for. And now I'm going to start this altar to be praying for you. So if you want to join me here at the altar, you're invited to come. Dear God, we love you. And these altars are a special place. Not because they're built out of some kind of special wood. Not because they have some type of special stain on there. No. They're special because they're a witness between your people. Between your people and you. Your people and your people, of your faithfulness, of your power and your might, of your steadfast, ever-enduring love, God. Oh, we're so grateful. Lord, I lift up anybody that's here this morning that doesn't know you, Lord, that they're here at this altar today because they want to know you. They came seeking salvation today, God. I pray that they would leave here knowing that they found it. Like a man that found treasure in a field. Oh, may that be their hearts as they leave here today. To that Christian who's struggling in their walk and trying to be perfect and trying to please you, God, may this be the day that they realize that you're already loved them, you're already proud of them, and that you want to give them your spirit to help them to live this life. Lord God, would you give that to them today, Lord? Maybe they're here at this altar today and they're looking for healing. There's something that's broken in their heart or mind, or there's a physical ailment that's harming them, God. God, we know that you're a God who heals with one touch and with one word, with one drop of faith, God. We've seen you do mighty things. I pray, Lord, that you would do that in those lives today. Lord, I pray for this church. Lord, you know there's not been a morning where I haven't. There's not a person on that prayer that's in these pews that I have not and will not pray for. And Lord, I thank you for the privilege of being their pastor. And for all the things that you've taught me through them. And all the ways that you showed your faithfulness to us. But God, I'm putting them in your hands. I'm trusting that you will do a mighty work in them. Lord, I pray for the leaders, the church board leaders here. Lord, would you give them wisdom as they begin to prepare? Would you let them feel the love and the support of the rest of the church around them as they embark on this incredibly difficult journey, God? Would you be passionate with Pastor Dan as he begins to sift through and think about what resumes to bring here and things like that, God? We love you, Lord. And sometimes the times are hard. But Lord, as we leave this morning, when we go about our lives and we stop in here, will we remember this time at the altar? This witness between us together. And the other thing is that it's going to be witnessed to. Lord, may we not leave this morning in despair, but would you fill us with your spirit of hope?